Hey everyone, welcome to the UFO Hub livestream. Today's guest is going to be the one and only George Noory. I'm very excited that he was able to do this with me today. He's the host of Coast to Coast AM and also the host of Beyond Belief on Gaia TV. So we're going to get into Q&A fairly early, so please get your questions ready on Telegram if you're going to call in or on the chat. So remember, if you're going to submit a chat question, make sure to put 3 little stars before you submit your question. So then this way I will know it's for George and it's not just you guys chatting in the room. So let me see here. Hi, George. How are you? Thanks for being on.
I'm great.
Awesome.
And thank you for inviting me to the UFO Hub. I'm looking forward to this. We did something a few years ago with an interview, but this is kind of cool.
Yeah, because it took a while, but I know you're very busy, and I know that for a fact because I worked with you during the Ozark UFO conference and just working all that out, and you're just all over the place. But I'm really glad we were able to work this out. You know, I hope. I know you just a little bit from when I met you in person and over the years that we chatted, and I don't mean to embarrass you, but I want to personally thank you very much because in the very beginning, when I first started this out, I was, very hesitant to talk to people and especially breaking out kind of out of this UFO closet. And so I was basically just talking to my friends and recording them as one of my first interviews. So I just thought, why not reach out to George Noory? And to my surprise, about a day or two later, an assistant answered back and said, George would love to do the interview. And I almost shit my pants. So, it was
don't do that. Don't do that.
So anyways, I really appreciate it because, by us doing that interview so many years ago, it just basically, told me, I mean, it's just downhill from George. I mean, how much better can I possibly do? And it just gave me that confidence to say, it's okay for me to ask questions, because a lot of times, especially for someone starting out, it's unsure. I was unsure of myself. And so that was a great beginning for me. So
well, let me tell you an interesting story real briefly about why I did that interview with you. Years ago, I was at the nightclub and I saw a well-known baseball player come in, and I'm not going to mention his name. And a father came in with his little boy. It was after a St. Louis Cardinals baseball game. He was not a St. Louis Cardinal. He was the opposing team. And the little kid had the baseball card of that player. And the father brought him up to the baseball player and he said, Sir, would you sign this for my little boy who's standing right there with the baseball card? And the guy looked at him and said, No, I don't have time. I don't do stuff like that when I'm off. And I watched that and I said, if I ever make it big, and I really wasn't then, I was just doing a local show at the time, I will never turn my back on people who ask for help, ever. And I'll always remember that story, Adnan.
Well, I didn't know that until just now. So I'm glad you accepted. I'm very happy about that. So we have a very short time with you today. And so everyone that would like to ask some questions, please line them up, like I said, in the chat. And some of those that want to ask question on Telegram, you can join the UFO Hub Telegram group, join the voice chat, and you can ask the question directly to George. And so, but I figured for right now, George, you probably get this all the time. What got you into radio, and then how did you eventually became to be the host of Coast to Coast AM?
I've wanted to be in radio, Adnet, since I was a kid, or should I say the media in general. I was always interested in the supernatural and the unusual. I was a strange kid, but my mother helped me a lot. She brought me home books on UFOs and things like that, and I was obsessed with covering the unusual. And I figured the only way to get to people who understand this field would be to be a broadcaster, because they'll talk to a broadcaster. They won't just talk to George Noory, who picks up the phone. But if I'm George Noory, a radio reporter or a television reporter, they'll be more apt to do that. So I decided to go into broadcasting at the University of Detroit to study the unusual. And that's what I did. And my first radio job was at a station in Detroit at the time. It was called WCAR Radio, and it was just a great station to be at. And I started interviewing Stanton Friedman, who passed away, but he was a great ufologist. And I covered stories like that, and it just grew and grew and grew. Well, eventually, a station in St. Louis, where I was a news director at a TV station, jumping ahead back in 1978. And I was doing that for a couple of years, got out of the business, owned a horse farm, owned a television production company, decided to get back into radio, or I was going to be broke. So I decided to get back to do some more part-time talk radio. And a station in St. Louis picked me up, and I called myself the Nighthawk. And as the Nighthawk, I would cover these unusual stories, much like Art Bell did for Coast to Coast. And that's how the network heard about me. They said, here, there's a guy in St. Louis who's doing what Art's doing, interviewing a lot of the same people. We need backup for Art Bell, because at that time, Art had retired a couple times. He had quit. He'd come back. And they just wanted somebody who was there constantly to fill in for him when he was gone. And so they called me up and made me an offer after Art had left. Mike Siegel replaced him. And they said, would you be a backup for us? And who's going to say no to that opportunity? And I did. Well, then when Art finally got to a point where he said back in 2002, he told them that he was going to call it quits for good at that time. They came to me, and they flew into St. Louis, and they said, we want to make you an offer to host Coast to Coast full time. Will you do it? And I did. But let me jump ahead and tell you a very interesting story about how things happen. When I was a television producer in Detroit back in 78, 79, I had an anchorman by the name of Ken Thomas. Ken was our television anchorman, and I was the producer for one of his newscasts. And he used to bring in a little boy every once in a while to watch him do his thing. It was his son. Well, let's jump ahead years later. I'm in the office of Ken Kitchen, and there's a picture of Ken Thomas on his desk. His real name was Ken Kitchen. It was Craig's father, the president of Premier Radio at the time, who hired me to replace Art Bell, was the little boy who was at that Detroit television station when I was working with his father. Now, how about that for synchronicity?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I just love how sometimes things work out in this odd and beautiful way.
They
So
happen for a
George,
reason.
yeah. So George would, I guess I figured let's get started with Q&A, and so this
Sure,
will
let's
give
do
more
it.
people an opportunity to ask you questions. So the
Sure.
first person that I'm going to unmute her here in a second is Ginger. She actually heads the Coasties meeting in St. Louis. And so
Oh, great.
when I told her about this, she was very excited. So Ginger, just start talking and you'll be connected with George.
Thanks, Adnan. Hi, George.
Hi, Ginger. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a big fan. I'm in St. Louis and been listening to you since your Nighthawk days and all the way through till now. So
Well, thank you. Thank you for your support. We got to meet up when I get back to St. Louis one day.
that would be great. I mean, I hope I have a monthly meetup group that would love to meet you also. My first question for you is about Dr. Joel Wallick.
Yes.
I notice that he's the guest. He's probably the guest you have on the most, more than anybody else. And you guys have so many good sources for alternative health. Why Dr. Wallick? What is it about him and what he says that keeps you having him back again and again? And have you had personal experiences with what he suggests?
Yes, I've used some of the things, but the Longevity, which is the company Doc Wallach founded years ago, is a sponsor of Coast to Coast. You've heard some of their commercials and some of the shows. And what we decided a long time ago, and he does not pay for this at all, was to create an interview segment where he could help some of our listeners do it. And he decided he'll do it. He doesn't get paid from us. He doesn't pay us for that program. And he comes on, and I mix it up with him and pharmacist Ben Fuchs. So Doc Wallach is on, and then 6 weeks later, Doc Wallach comes back. But in between, pharmacist Ben Fuchs comes on. So he's really on for two reasons. One, he's been a sponsor of the show for so many years. I got to know him very well. And then I started meeting him at events and conventions prior to that. And I just like his message. We have a lot of other health guests on the show, Ginger, not just Doc Wallach, but Doc's the regular when it comes to that Q&A type show every 3 weeks to 6 weeks.
I see. That makes sense.
Okay, Ginger,
And
do you have
so-
another question?
Yeah, I was going to ask another question if it's okay. George,
Yeah,
congratulations on congratulations on Paranormal Date and the success of Paranormal Date. How did that idea come up, and what's it like for you to know that because of you, so many people are meeting, falling in love, getting friendships, getting married?
That was fun. I was at an event years ago, and a lady came up to me and said, I can't get a date. And I thought maybe she's asking me for one, but she started laughing, and I said, what do you mean you can't get a date? She said, I went on a date one day with a guy, and we're having dinner, and I start talking about Bigfoot and UFOs and ghosts, and he got up, paid the check, and left and said, I'm just not interested in you. And off he went. He said, George, this is what she said to me. She said, I need a place to meet people who know me and get me. And a light went off in my head, and I went, bingo. What if I do a dating service called Paranormal Date? And so I partnered up with a friend of mine who's understands the internet and all that, and he put it together for us. And it's been running now for many years and doing very well. They've had 114,000 actual signed up members who are meeting and getting together. People have gotten married, and you're right, Ginger, it's just been a great thing. But that's how it started. It started with one lady who couldn't get a date and asked me for help.
Okay, thank you, Ginger. I appreciate that. The next question is from Bradley. He's in South Africa. He submitted it over chat. He was asking,
Okay.
George, what is the most fascinating case or info, in your opinion, over the course of your career? And could you explain your stance of consciousness and your understanding from your experience?
Well, first of all, Bradley, thank you. And I hope everything is well in South Africa for you. Consciousness to me is our innate ability to do these incredible things. And I have tapped into that constantly in my life and in my career to do things that I thought I needed to accomplish. And so it works in a very big way. In terms of some of the special things I've done in my life, I've had some synchronicity events that have occurred that have been truly remarkable. Some are personal, some are public. But there's something out there. Let's call it God, call it whatever you want. But there's something out there that ties us all together. I have always called it the wireless internet, where we're connected with people. And through thought process and dreaming and things like that, we can connect with each other and make things really happen. And I've always been a believer in that. And it's worked for me many, many times.
Thank you, George. The next question would be from this person, and I think it's more of a statement, and they're basically asking, I guess you probably get that on Coast to Coast AM a lot too. They drove a UFO with extraterrestrials and time traveling. And so they have some proof and are asking if you or I would be interested in seeing. And of course, I always say yes. So I know at least through UFO Hub at ufohub.net, there's a contact form, and you can submit whatever you like there for me to see it. And I don't know, George, if you have something similar to that. I'm sure you do.
We do at George at coasttocoastam.com. But Adnan, if you want to, you have my personal email as well. You can forward me anything you want, and I'll take a look at it for you.
Okay, good deal.
Okay?
Let me see. This one is from Fab22. He's in France, asking what
Well,
story.
you've got people all over the place,
Yeah,
don't you?
I do. Well, I even ask them too sometimes. It's like this must be late. At 7 is really late in Europe, and they just, I guess, love the topics, and of course, probably talk to you as well. The question is, what's so he wrote it a bit weird. What story you covered that has changed the most your paradigm of thinking? Does that make sense? I'm sorry, his the way he wrote it probably doesn't translate very well from French to English.
Let me tell you what I got years ago when I was doing my St. Louis Nighthawk show. I got a call from an individual who said that he was contemplating suicide. He was telling me a story. He wasn't thinking of suicide when he called. He had already gone through that. But he said, George, I have to tell you this story. I was thinking of killing myself. I was depressed. Nothing was working. My job was bad. I had a bad relationship. Everything was going wrong. That's not a reason to kill yourself, folks. But that's what he said. And he said, I decided to get in my car. I had a gun, and I was going to drive to some place and kill myself. And so I just drove and drove and drove. And about an hour outside of my city, I saw a small little lake with ducks coming into it and flying out of it, and a little park bench on the side. And I said, that's where I'm going to decide. That's where I want to kill myself, sitting on that bench. And it's serene, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm thinking to myself, my God. But so he did this. He goes to this bench. He's ready to kill himself. And he said, all of a sudden, some farmer comes out of nowhere and sits down next to me, and he won't stop talking. He's talking about his life and this and that and this. But he said, I got to be honest with you. After about an hour of just listening to this old guy, I felt pretty good. I decided I'm going to go back and get a new job. I'm going to find a new relationship. And that's what I did. About a year later, I decided to go back and thank the farmer for saving my life. And he said, but I didn't get his real full name. But I figured there's only one little barber shop in this little town. They'll know who this guy is. So the guy goes to the barber, and he goes in and he says, excuse me, sir, I know you're busy, but about a year ago, I met this farmer, and I really want to find him again and thank him for something he did for me. Any idea who he is? He looks like this. And the guy said, oh, you want to go to the White House a couple blocks down on the right and talk to the guy's daughter. And he said, okay, thank you. And he said, George, as I was going to that house, I kind of felt something had happened, the way the barber had acted. I get to the house, I knock on the door. This younger lady comes to the door, and I said, excuse me, but is your father home? I want to thank him for something he did for me last year. And she said, wait. You're the 10th person to come to my house. Dad died 13 years ago. Now, that story I will remember for the rest of my life, how chilling it is, how this farmer came out of nowhere to save this guy's life, and he had passed on 13 years ago. That's a remarkable story. It's stuff like that that drives me in Coast to Coast every night.
Well, George, originally I was really trying really hard to get one of my friends on because he's not very well versed with technology and phones, and I needed him to install Telegram to be able to at least tell you this himself. But so I'll do it on his behalf. Probably not going to do it justice, but he basically he was really excited to hear that I was going to have you on, and he wanted to talk to you because this is his story. At one point, and this is something I wasn't aware of as well. Considering that I was his close friend, he was thinking about killing himself, and he was
Oh
actually,
God.
it was late at night, and you were on, and there was something that you said during your show and some guest that you had that basically just obviously made him change his mind. And he told me the story, and like I said, I'm not going to do it justice because it's a long story to get into, but he wanted to personally talk to you and thank you, and so I tried to get into him, but I don't know, it just didn't work out. But at least I wanted to relay that, and his name is Jim.
Well, that's good. Jim, thank you. If you're listening right now, I really appreciate our ability to help you out. That's one of the reasons, Adnan, we broadcast live on holidays. There are so many people out there who don't have family, they don't have a lot of friends. This radio show, Coast to Coast, is their connection to the outside world. And I can imagine sometimes what it's like to go through Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's Eve or New Year's Day without having friends or family. And that they look forward to the radio show where they can connect. And that's why we do it. And I made that pledge when I first took over back in 2003 that I will be live on any holiday that falls on a work day that I'm scheduled. And if they fall on like a Saturday where I have my weekend people, they'll do it live too. There will be no tape shows on holidays. I've insisted on that for 18 years, and we've done that all the time. And I'm looking at the calendar for Labor Day, Thanksgiving, it's right up here on my chart up here. Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day. We're going to be live. We're going to be live. One of our hosts, whether it's me or our weekend people, will be live on the holidays. And it's for reasons for your friend, people like that.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you, very much. And yeah, you don't realize how much a small thing like that, helps a person. And this just goes for almost anything. Just giving some glimmer of hope or an attention or bit of your time, makes a difference in a person's
Oh,
life.
big time. It really does. And it makes me feel good too.
So, for those of you that would like to talk to George and you're on Telegram, please make sure you raise your hand so that way I know you want to speak to him directly. Otherwise, as I mentioned before, please submit your question using the three little stars so that way I know it's directed towards the guest. And so, the next person I have on Telegram is Rick. Rick, you are unmuted, and go ahead and ask your question.
He's unmuted still, and I can't hear him.
Let's see. Okay, there
Can
he
you hear
goes.
me now?
Yeah,
Yep, go
Rick,
ahead.
how are you?
Okay, hey, good, George. How are you doing?
Great, good. Thanks for calling.
Good. Sure. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to answer our questions. So I'm curious. So, especially in a world of media today, where there's like so much mudslinging and the word like conspiracy theorist is like thrown around like all over the place, like there's other radio show hosts in this field that also can like they get like exploited by corporate media. And I was curious how I feel that you're really well respected in this whole field, and I want to know like how you think you set yourself apart from people that get exploited, why you're so well respected, and if you were ever afraid of maybe being exploited when you first stepped up to this subject as a radio show host.
Well, one of the things, Rick, our network has never interfered with Coast to Coast or in my performance on the air. They don't send me notes saying you should say this or you should say that. They leave us alone because the program is so successful. But I have always, since I was just younger in broadcasting, have decided that, I'm going to set myself apart from a lot of other broadcasters, tell the truth, look at the facts, present the facts without a lot of opinion, and just present it so you can make up your own mind, whether you believe in UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever our subject matter is. You can do that. I mean, the vaccine, for example, I haven't gotten the COVID vaccine. I will never tell anybody to get it or not to get it. That's your decision to make. But that's the way I present the program. And it's been very successful for us that way.
Thank you for that. Rick, do you have another question?
No, I think that answers it. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Okay,
Rick.
thank
Where
you.
are you, Rick, by the way? Whereabouts are you in the country?
I am also in St. Louis in the Manchester area.
Know it well. My daughter lives out in Baldwin.
Very nice. You're in St. Louis too, right? You're still in St. Louis?
I'm in Los Angeles right now. I'll be back in St. Louis in August, back in LA in September. Then I'm going to go back to St. Louis October, November, December. So if we ever hook up with Ginger at one of her meetings, come on by.
Well, thanks a lot, George.
Okay, Rick. Take care.
Okay, thank you, Rick. The next question, I saw a raised hand by Nathan. Nathan, unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, hello, Anand. Thank you for having me on, and hello, George. It's a pleasure
Hi,
and
Nathan.
an honor to. Hello. I had a question more. I didn't know if you had any insider knowledge or just to get your opinion. You're hearing a lot of things about the 5G and this vaccine and how it's making people magnetic and stuff. Do you know if there's any are the things connected? Have you heard anything about that? Have you had any experts on about that on your show?
We're going to be
Can you
doing
speak on
some
that?
more 5G shows in the not too distant future. I haven't done any programs on the vaccine connected to 5G at all. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, I think, believes that the vaccine magnetizes people. I don't know if that does or not, but we're going to be looking into some of that. One of the things we have to be very cautious about is all these stories that are out there to try to filter through some of them. Some are true, some are not true. And I want to make sure that before it goes on the air on our program, that there's a real strong basis for it.
All right, thank you, Nathan. I appreciate that. George, sorry, I'm multitasking here.
That's all right.
The next question is from Benny Ford. She says or asks, what was the most intriguing alien story that you've ever heard?
What's the most intriguing alien story I've ever heard? I had a buddy of mine who covered a story back in Ellsbury, Missouri, years ago. His name is Ron Barber. He was the reporter. And he was assigned to cover a UFO flap. That's the cases where UFOs were all over the place in this small town of Ellsbury, Missouri. And when he got to this city, he looked at a scorched area of a tree that witnesses said a UFO was hovering over. And he said, George, what was so unusual about this is the side of a tree, there were thousands of dead flies burned into the tree bark, like they were melted right in. And he said, I have no idea how something like that would ever happen. That was kind of an intriguing UFO case for me because it was so real coming from a friend of mine who was a reporter. And he said another thing that had happened was, he said there was a pasture of cows where people had said the UFO had landed and took off. Cows were walking around in a circle, like 8 cows around this UFO spot, not going inside of it, but just walking around it, one after the other in a circle. That was kind of strange too. But there are all kinds of strange stories when they come to UFOs.
Thank you, George. George, what I wanted to ask you, do you have, I hope you have plans to continue doing coast to coast as long as you possibly can. Is that the case?
We just signed a new contract, Don, to take me in the program through the end of 27. So that is six more years from now.
Well, that's
and
great.
we're gonna keep doing it. God willing, if we stay healthy, we'll keep doing the show. I had made this dumb remark when I first took over in 2003. I looked at the calendar and said, well, I'll do this for 9 years. I'll retire at the end of the Mayan calendar 2012 date. What a great way to go out. Well, I got to 2012 and I went, I don't want to leave. And so I've just made a decision to keep working until one day Tom Danheiser comes back on the air and says, George has passed away on the air, folks. I'm sorry, he's gone. I'm going to just keep working until I stop.
Well, I'm glad. I know the first time I first heard your name was in '05, and I was still in college then. And it was so weird how the conversations about UFOs went on. It was all so hush hush, but it started out with like this reasonable, thing saying, well, if it's all just us out here, it's awfully lot of waste of space, and it always starts out in these general terms, and then you um, go into more and more details, and you kind of test the other person of how far can you go with this. And sometimes you find a like-minded person, next thing you know, you're sharing ghost stories and everything else, and then others just kind of like, okay, well, I got to go watch baseball now, so yeah, it's interesting how far and how much things have changed since '05.
Oh, it really is. What got you to start UFO Hub, Adnan?
Well, I actually had my own experiences after, basically researching it for a long time. I wanted to. What happened was, it was actually coast to coast, that it was some other guest that was on, and I was, I'm a subscriber, or at least now I'm sorry, I let it lapse. I'm going to have it resubscribe again. But
Renew that. You mean you're a Coast
right.
Insider, right?
Coast Insider, right. And so I was listening to it during the day at work. So I'll just download the 4 files, for 4 hours, and just would listen. And so there was a guest on that was, I believe, either talking to you or one of the other hosts. I'm sorry, I can't remember. But he was mentioning Bashar. And it was supposed to be, this being that's channeled by Daryl Enka, and the information that's coming through. So I found that very interesting, and I kind of followed up on that, and that follow-up changed my whole life, because I finally was able to, because Nuts and Bolts only gets one so far, and you always kind of have to be at the beck and call of the government, waiting to see what will they release, how far can they tell us, what are they going to do next, and so the information coming through from Bashar was all about, you can connect with us. You don't have to go through your government. To them, a president or a normal person is on the same importance level. The hierarchy is within our society, not theirs. And basically, I then moved to Robertsville, Missouri, and I was basically in the midst of all that process, because I actually received the download, just to make a story short, about to the same way that when I first started out reading books and kind of trying to connect my own dots, it was my way to kind of try to do video and have guests on and hear the people, because there's something about hearing the author themselves talk about their work, or any kind of work that they do, and different
because
subjects.
they know everything about the subject matter so well. You've had Daryl Enka on your program. He's a great guest, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And I don't know if you did. Did you ever interview him as well?
He's been on our program before in the past.
Must have missed it. I can't believe that I missed that
over the
part.
years. See, you should not have let that lapse.
I know.
15 cents a day, you can be a Coast Insider.
Yep. Yeah, it's very, it's like, I learned basically to listen more than to watch, because while you're working, I can't pay attention to things. So my listening improved. So when people say something, and they're like, you must have heard this wrong. I'm like, no, I listen every day, and I know you said this, and that. So it's kind of weird which parts of your body kind of adapt and become better. So
have you signed up for TikTok yet?
No, I don't do TikTok.
You should sign up at our Coast to Coast website on TikTok, because people are sharing some really strange things. It's kind of fun.
Right. Well, I'm already having
and your information's private.
Right. Well, I'm having I don't know. I'm just not a fan of TikTok, especially when some of the information with the Chinese connection came out. I just kind of like, the Chinese government. Yeah. And so I was like, no, I'm just, I'll try it out. I mean, I can't trust Telegram either, or any of the other platforms. I just hope one day, the information will continue to stay private for everybody.
Just don't put too much personal stuff out there. That's all.
Right. So, George, I have another question here. This one is from Fab22 again. It says, with all the paranormal issues you reported on, how do you manage to remain so calm and clear-minded and well-grounded?
I am. No, I'm kidding. But you have to. I mean, you have to take responsibility for these stories that you report on or cover on a regular basis. And I sometimes try to separate them from my personal life in order to do exactly what you just said, stay calm and not let a lot of stuff affect me. This is a strange time we're living in right now. And if you let everything we hear on a daily basis affect you, you're going to go crazy. I mean, you're just going to go nuts. And so I try to separate that as much as I can.
You know, I always say to people, it's always good to take in the information and just keep it in the back of your mind, because sometimes it would drive somebody nuts, feeling like you have to act on every piece of information. That would be kind of borderline insanity, but I always keep it in back of my mind of all the things I've ever heard on Coast or personal conversations I've had. And so if I then in person come across, something that I know about, then I have a reference point. But other than that, there's almost no point of getting all too riled up about it.
Exactly. Can you see this?
Yeah. Yep.
Can you see?
What
Can you
is
see
that?
the alien in the background?
Yeah, I see it. What is
Somebody
that?
made that for me. Somebody made this thing. Let me bring it forward here a little bit. It's kind of heavy, but they made this out of plaster and shipped it to us.
Is it based on the E.T. in the movie?
Yeah, I think so. They did a great job with this, didn't they?
Well, I can imagine you have all kinds of gifts.
All kinds of stuff. I had a lady sent me for a Christmas once a fruit cake, and she had bitten in it. So I got the cake. I open it up. I don't eat anything that anybody sends me, by the way. It's just a personal thing. I open up this fruit cake, and there's her teeth marks in the thing. She had just taken that. She chomped it right out, and then she sent me a little card in there. And
Do you think that was intentional?
the biting?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So, George, I have another question from Hubert. He's asking, and I don't know if you can speak on this. Again, I lapsed my subscriptions, but I will get back to it soon, so I know whether or not this was covered on Coast. Hubert was asking, when do you think the med beds become available to the public?
These are the special beds that are supposed to have healing properties. Good question. Good question. Who knows? I can't tell you.
Okay. This one is, sometimes I wish people would take some time to actually spell things out nicely because it just makes it easier to read.
You got a lot of people in your chat room right now?
Yeah, they're just, I asked them to differentiate the question towards you with these three little stars. And so that way I know it's for you. But then some of these are just random words put together. I'm like, if I can't make sense of it, how can you? Okay, let me go to the next one.
You're the interpreter, so
Right.
I don't see the messages. I just get them from you.
Okay, good deal. So next one is from Ida asking or saying, "Hi George, a huge fan. What is the weirdest story you've heard that you believed to be truthful?"
Hi Ida. First of all, it was my grandmother on my mother's side. That was her name, and that's a very interesting name to be sure. There are a lot of great stories that are out there. I mean, I like one that a police officer called me once and said they had a call to help somebody who was dying of a heart attack. And he said, George, me and my partner got to the house before the emergency medical technicians got there. So we knock on the door. A little old man opens up the door and lets us in. And we look, and on the floor is a person on his stomach, face down, obviously in distress, maybe even dying, maybe dead. I don't know. We got in there, rolled him over. It was the guy who opened the door for us to let us in. How could that be? The guy had died, so his spirit and soul opened the door for them. That's weird. I mean, I get those all the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So George, this is just real quick. So for those of you watching, please make sure you put the 3 little stars before your question. That way I know it's for George. Because one person was saying, "Oh, it's like you skipped me." Basically, it's like no, there's no topic that on my end is taboo. And I don't know about you,
No,
George, but
we'll take them. We'll take them all. I've got
but I
about
see
5 more
now.
minutes for you.
Right. What I see now, what she wrote. Basically wrote the Casey said, "What's the deal with Rh negative blood?"
Well, that's supposed to be some kind of ET type situation, some kind of genetic alteration. But a lot of people have been concerned about Rh negative blood, to be sure. I'm O positive. That's what my blood is. How about you, Adnan? Do you know what yours is?
Yeah, I'm O positive too.
A lot of people are. I think it's one of the predominant ones. But Rh negative is extremely unusual, and a lot of people think it's extraterrestrial. I don't know. I really don't.
So the other one is from Bradley again, asking any planned events for South Africa.
No, we're not going to leave the country right now, especially with COVID, Bradley. We had a lot of events last year cancel. We've got a new one coming up on September 25th in Everett, Washington, which is going really well. But there's really no plans to do anything outside of the country. So, thank you for listening. We'll continue to broadcast into South Africa and all over the place on the internet, but we don't plan to do any live stage shows there.
Okay, and I figured we started with Ginger, and we'll finish off with Ginger. She raised her hand and has another question for you. So, Ginger,
Sure.
you are unmuted, and go ahead and ask it.
Yeah, George, I was wondering if you could share with us who on your team helps pick out your guests and what's your criteria for who you interview. That's got to be a big part of your job, and what makes Coast to Coast great is choosing those guests.
We've got an executive producer, Ginger. Her name was Lisa Lyon, Lyon. You could reach her through our website. Then we have Tom Danheiser, our producer and my showrunner. When I'm on the air, he's there with me taking the calls. And then I do too constantly. I'm sending them little clips and notes. Last week we had Dr. Stephen Rossetti, the Monsignor, on, who has a PhD, and he's an exorcist. I noticed a little article about him that the Catholic Church was relying on him more and more to do exorcisms. So I sent that to Lisa, and she tracked him down for us and got that. But we really have a tier of 3 people, me, Tom Danheiser, and Lisa Lyon, who are looking for guests on a regular basis. And what we do is we'll put in 2 regular show guests per night. In the old days, it was just 1, but we found that the research showed that if somebody gets bored with a guest or they're not interested, they tend to tune out. Well, now with 2 guests with 2 different topics, they're more apt to stay around. So we're doing it that way. So it's a lot of work to book. We're on 7 nights a week live. That's 14 guests a week, and you're trying to keep it fresh and different. But it's that tier of people, Lisa Lyon, Tom Danheiser, and myself, who work on all the guests.
All right.
That's
well,
great. Thanks, George.
All right,
Thank you,
Ginger,
Ginger.
thank you.
Well, George, thank you very much again. I really appreciate you being on today. I appreciate
Thank
your
you,
time.
Adnan.
Please say hi to Tom Danheiser for me. I know it's been a while since I talked to him. So, again, I wish you all the best. And as always, we'll stay in touch. Thank you again for today and answering the questions. So, yeah, I think this will be it. Everyone else, thanks for logging in. And so
Thank you.
by Wednesday, we're going to have open lines. Friday, I'm going to have another guest. So just stay tuned. But for now, George, everyone else, take care. Thank you. And later.
Thank you, Adnan.